Hey, this is Jeffrey Suey with Coaches Training Blog and JTS Advisors. And whether you're a student at Master Coach University, a business coach, or a leader in an organization, I think this video is going to make a difference for you. We're going to talk a little bit about 3-step strategic planning for organizations. In this video, I'm going to give you an overview of strategic planning, and then we're going to take a deep dive into step 1, the capture. So first, let's talk about why bother. Why actually create a strategic plan? This might surprise you, but over half the organizations, even successful organizations, don't have a written strategic plan. So why does it help? Well, first of all, it's good to know where you're going. It's good to know where you're going and actually how to get there. Strategic plans don't just tell us where we actually want to go, like the goals, so to speak. They also give us a sense of how are we actually going to get there, because there's lots of paths that might actually reach the same result. Also, organizations are made up of more than one person. So although maybe the CEO, the president of the organization might have an idea of where you're going, how you're supposed to get there, maybe the team needs to know about that also. So a strategic plan in writing, a clear strategic plan, helps make sure that the entire team can be a part of the plan and actually have an idea of, okay, what's the destination for this year or this decade, and what is the strategy, or what are the strategies to get us to that destination? It also provides a blueprint for a little bit of accountability, helps you stay on track. You might have experienced this in the past. I know I do as an individual from time to time, that I have this great idea about what I'm going to do to expand my business or my life, and then time goes by after the idea came up, and I get kind of caught up in other things that became urgent. And guess what? This can happen for entire organizations. You got this great idea, great plan. I've seen plenty of very intelligent and capable business leaders that have all these great plans that just never get done. And a big part of why they don't get done, those leaders get caught up in urgency. And they never make progress towards that dream or that next level strategic goal for themselves or their organization. Also, a strategic plan can create confidence and optimism about the future, because the strategic plan, at least part of the design of it, is to actually identify what that compelling future is. And without a compelling future, there's no possibility of fulfillment or the kind of performance that is really required to achieve extraordinary results. So now that we talked about why bother actually creating a strategic plan, let's get into the 3 steps in the 3-step strategic planning process. Step number 1 is called the capture step. Step number 2 is where you're going to take everything you've captured in step 1 and prioritize it. So it's going to be a prioritization process. And then finally, we have an organization step. So capture, prioritize, and then organize. Let's get into a little bit more detail about each of these steps. First, the capture step. In this step, all you're doing is finding every goal, change, and solution for this organization, and you're just capturing all of that. Step 2, prioritize. This is where you're actually taking everything, like we talked about before, that was captured in the capture step, and deciding what's most important, and then also what's not important as well. And third, the organize step, where you're taking the priorities and you're structuring a plan that makes sense to everyone. Part of organization is creating clarity so that your team and you can be clear on, okay, what were the priorities again? Really, really important note as well, every single step is completed in writing. Capture, prioritize, and organize. So let's go ahead and move over to drilling down into the capture step. Before you can plan, you need to capture everything that might help you find the best goals, changes, and solutions to create the future for your organization. Why is this important? Well, no one can 100% predict what's going to help or hurt your organization. Missing a small item can equal missing a big gain or opportunity, or could cause a big problem. So you really want to be able to capture everything. And you simply can't make the best decisions from ignorance or incomplete information. Now, capturing will generate options for you during the strategic planning process, and more options equals making decisions from power. It gives you the power because you actually have more flexibility to reach the destination, or even flexibility on the destinations that you might decide to move towards. Also, more options, it equals less stress. And stress is just an achiever's word for fear. And if the organization is in fear or driven by fear, generally the decisions aren't going to be the best. And that organization is going to have less and less power and influence over time. Ultimately, making the predominance of your decisions from fear is like trying to win the Indy 500 going in reverse. You're just constantly moving away from things that you're afraid of or that are painful. And it's just not the fastest way to get your destination. Not to mention, you're probably not going to win that race. Finally, when you capture, you create better chances that you'll choose the best option because you have fleshed out all of the options, or as many of the options as you can fathom during this capture process. So now let's get to the how. How do you do this? How do you capture all the possible goals and decisions and actions that your organization could or should make progress on within the next year or 6 months? First, just go ahead and collect everything. Collect all your ideas. Put them in one place right in front of you. This would include any notes that you've been taking, old plans, whether they've been completed successfully or not. You might gather together books and reference works that identify certain strategies or goals that might be important for your organization. The capture should include any schedules or timelines that you already have that are standing or hypothetical schedules. And also any past results like metrics, numbers you've achieved, past accomplishments that the organization has already proven it's capable of. Now, once you've gathered all this together, you're going to review these items. You're going to review these ideas. And as you do that, identify anything out of these ideas that's a viable candidate to be part of the organization's strategic plan. You're already starting to make decisions about what might we want to include in this plan. And as you pull those from these sources, you're going to want to write each item separately on a fresh numbered list. How many items you end up with is really a function of the complexity of that plan, the size of your organization, and also how detailed and how far you want to go with the possible options. I mean, you could go on forever capturing more ideas, right? So there's a point where you're going to need to draw that line. You got to decide where that line is, and that's part of how you contribute to your organization or how you guide the strategic planning process in your organization. The bottom line with this is that there's no perfect number of capture items. I know for my organization, I've captured probably bordering on 100 items in any particular strategic planning retreat, but I've also seen organizations that have captured several hundred items in a capture process, and also some smaller organizations that have captured maybe 20 or 30. Now let's talk about what to capture. The how is actually pretty simple, as you can tell, but what kind of things might you be capturing here? Let's go over some ideas, and this list I'm about to give you is definitely not comprehensive, but it'll give you a sense of the types of thinking and questions that might appear during a capture process that could be really, really helpful down the road. Okay, let's start with a SWOT analysis. Now, if you're familiar with the SWOT analysis, you know it stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. These are just a variety of ways to take a look at an organization and really what its prospects are and some possible goals or challenges to identify in the capture process. So starting with strengths, you might think about how can we increase our strengths or take more advantage of them. Next, weaknesses. How can we strengthen or mitigate a weakness that is currently showing up in the organization? Opportunities, obviously, how can we take advantage of these opportunities? What are the opportunities we should be focused on? What opportunities should be explored or pursued further? And finally, threats. What are some of the threats that we need to deal with? How can we mitigate or avoid that threat? Let's move on to another really simple model. This is a model I learned from one of my original mentors. It's called GSA, and it stands for Goal, Strategy, Action. Goals, strategies, and actions all should be thought of as prospective capture items. So goals, obviously, what should be accomplished? What should be some of the end results that you want to see? Strategies, again, answers the question how. How should something be accomplished? What approaches to producing results should be explored? And then finally, actions. What should be done? What should be done more often or less often? Changes to actions. All prospects for capturing. Next, let's move on to problems. Problems are a sign of a successful organization. Every organization, every human being has problems. And the fact is that although a lot of people think from goal perspective, like being positive, 80% of people think about results, whether it be in an organization or in their life, from a perspective of problem versus goal. Meaning they're not thinking about like the positive goals that they're pursuing and that they're going after. They're thinking about the negative problem that's keeping them from that goal. The things that need to be solved in order to get to that next level. They focus on the problem. And it's totally fair to do that. You can think of problems as the other side of the goal coin. In fact, solving and choosing the right strategic problem will clear the path to achieve some of the most important goals in an organization. Next, let's talk about priorities. Now, there are common priorities for any organization. One, this is an obvious one, money. Money is oxygen in an organization. So cash flow, profits, income, sales, all fair fodder for a capture process. Next, systems and anything else that could cause higher efficiency, productivity, return on investment, etc. Anything that would improve what needs to get done in this organization, worth considering. Next, customers. Most organizations are going to have customers in some way, shape, or form. So what kind of results or actions could produce more of them? Happier customers, repeat customers, more profitable customers, more of the right customer. And then finally, more successful customers. More customers that get the real value that you're promising them. And then finally, culture and team. Ultimately, people are what makes a business successful. Every successful organization is made out of successful people. So more of the right team members, better team members, happier team members, more productive team members, all outcomes to consider to take ground towards the ultimate success of an organization. Also, in your capture process, you might do a little brainstorming and imagine some things that don't yet even exist in this organization. New ideas, new directions, new goals, perhaps some new commitments. And when I mean commitments, I mean there might be some things that the organization already does to some extent, but it's not a true standard for the organization. So perhaps setting higher standards in terms of some of the operating principles of that organization, turning something that should get done into a must. Ultimately, organizations that are successful because they've set a standard to be successful. They decide what that measure of success is, but ultimately wanting to achieve a certain level, a certain profit, a certain growth curve does not make that happen. Desire is fine. There's plenty of organizations out there that desire lots of stuff. The standard that that organization sets and maintains is what's going to predict the success or failure of that organization. And then again, we've already covered some things that already exist. Some things that already exist, maybe they shouldn't. You might want to set some stop doing goals. Like we're really focused on this one particular type of customer or marketing tactic, and it's really not working so well, or it's costing us opportunity in other areas. Stop doing goals, as they talk about in Good to great book by Jim Collins that you should read, discusses that stop doing goals are the least focused on goals in an organization, yet sometimes that can be the most important goal. Famous example of this is Apple. One of the things that you'll hear about Apple's strategic decision process is that Apple had a lot of products that were actually marginally successful, like they still were profitable or generated revenue, and yet there were decisions that were made in that organization to eliminate those products, to just stop doing those products, stop creating those products. And this happened over and over and over again in the history of Apple. But as they did this, they saved resources, they eliminated opportunity cost, and it allowed them to focus their money resources, their human resources, really all their resources on just a few what have now become legendary products. The iPod or the iPhone would never have been possible had they run with the countless products that over the years they had to make tough decisions to eliminate and stop doing. So stop doing goals are highly valuable. Next, problems we already talked about, and we've already discussed things that are already working and possibly making those things better, doing it more, profiting more from that asset. Great example of doing more of what works or profiting, finding more ways to profit from a core asset might be Honda. Honda started out making motors and motorcycles, and they just had a couple particular products that was really leveraging this core asset of making really, really reliable, efficient, high-quality engines very cheaply. And then suddenly Honda starts making lawnmowers and cars and on and on and on. So they found new ways to do more of what's working. And they identified this core asset of generating these engines into lots of different markets. And of course, there are some things that are not currently working that already exist. Should you fix it? Should you stop it completely? Or should you change it? And finally, although it might seem like we're jumping the gun a little bit on this, what might be some changes to priorities that could be important for the organization? What is something that needs to be more important than it currently seems to be in the organization? Why? What's something that needs to be less important for the organization, and why? These could be really critical to capture, because let's say that in order to really be successful in generating sales, you need to spend, let's say just as an individual, you need to spend 50% of your time making phone calls. And currently you're making phone calls 40% of your time. Clearly, phone calls are a part of the actions within you as that organization. But it sounds like that needs to be more important. And if you don't make that decision, hey, I need to make more phone calls, I need to get to 50% or 60% or whatever it really needs to be optimal, you'll really never hit the growth curve that you could hit. And what's really sad is there's a lot of individuals or organizations that are treading water. They're really not making progress, and they're just 2 centimeters off the mark. They're 2 centimeters left of center. So knowing your core assets, knowing what's really working, and knowing what amount of something it takes to make it work, these are really, really crucial. And it should be considered to be part of the capture, so it could be inserted into your strategic plan and then ultimately can be executed. So that's the capture step, really in a nutshell. Obviously, you can get much more complicated with this, but for now, the point is to make that numbered list and use the expertise that you have and that your organization has, so we can do the really hard work of prioritizing these elements once the brainstorming's done and the lists have been completed. Let me know what you think about the entire process as well as the capture step. Anything that I missed, go ahead and leave a comment below. I'd love to hear about how this made a difference for you, your organization, or the businesses that you're currently coaching and supporting in their growth towards fulfilling their ultimate mission and vision as well. This is Jeffrey Suey. Thanks a lot for watching this, and I look forward to talking to you about step 2, prioritize, in our next video.